The soft hum of the air conditioner in my office contrasted sharply with the storm of thoughts raging in my head. I am Anna, a 28-year-old lawyer. My life now is far removed from the turmoil of my childhood, a past I kept secret even from those closest to me. The tranquility of my office was broken by the ringing of the telephone. The display showed an unfamiliar number, but something about it seemed ominously familiar. I hesitantly picked up the phone and said, combining professionalism and caution in my voice, "Anna, it's your father." There was a nervousness in my voice that did nothing to calm my growing anxiety. A chill ran through me. It had been more than 10 years since I'd last heard that voice, a voice that had once meant safety and love, but had become a symbol of betrayal and pain. "Why are you calling me?" I asked sharply, cutting through the silence that followed his introduction. "I'm in trouble, Anna. Financial. I need your help," he said, his voice trembling slightly, and his plea, however sincere, lit a fire of resentment in me. "My help now? You need me after all these years?" I replied, my tone a mixture of disbelief and anger. "Yes, I do. I wouldn't have asked if it wasn't serious. I'm really in a bind," he continued, desperation in his voice. "You stopped being my father a long time ago. You can't just call me now and expect me to help," I replied, my voice cold and unwavering. There was a pause in the receiver, a heavy silence that seemed like an unbridgeable chasm. "Anna, please. I'm still your father," he said, making a feeble attempt to rekindle the long-extinct connection. The word dad seemed foreign, almost shocking to her. "Father, you forfeited that title when you chose her over me," I said, and years of repressed anger and resentment found an outlet in my words. "You are my daughter. I thought you—" he began, but I cut him off halfway through. "You thought wrong. You made your choice years ago, and now I've made mine," I said firmly, and hung up the phone. My childhood up to the age of 10 was filled with love and laughter, a testament to the wonderful life my parents and I shared in our small rented house. My mother, a beacon of joy and kindness, filled our days with warmth and our nights with stories and dreams. My father, once a playful and caring man, spent his evenings playing games with me or teaching me trivia about the world. Our home was a cocoon of happiness where every day was an adventure and every night a sweet dream. But our blissful life came to an end with the untimely death of my mother. The house that once resounded with laughter and love became a silent mausoleum of memories. I remember walking through the rooms and every corner was a reminder of her absence. The loss was unbearable not only for me, but also for my father who had lost the love of his life. However, the depth of his grief seemed to diminish quickly, much to my confusion and horror. Just a few months later, he brought home Marissa, the woman who was to play an important role in our lives. I remember the day he introduced her, the day that marked the end of my cherished childhood. "Anna, this is Marissa. She's going to be staying with us," my father announced one evening, his voice devoid of the warmth I was so accustomed to. I looked up at her, searching for a hint of motherly warmth or friendliness, but found none. Her presence was imposing, her gaze cold and calculating. From the very first moment, I sensed a change in the air, a shift that filled me with an unexplainable sense of dread. "Hello, Anna," Marissa said, her voice smooth yet devoid of genuine emotion. Her smile, rather than comforting, seemed to hide something sinister beneath its surface. In the days that followed, the house felt different, as if the walls themselves were recoiling from her presence. The cheerful memories of the past seemed to fade, replaced by a lingering unease that settled in every corner. I remember looking at Marissa, trying to find something redeeming or kind about her, but her every look, every gesture, seemed to be laced with an unspoken animosity. It was clear that she wasn't here to fill the void my mother had left, but to weave a new narrative, one in which I was an unwelcome part. As I watched her move around our home, a home that once felt safe and happy, I couldn't help but feel that her arrival was the beginning of something ominous. The way she looked at me, with eyes that seemed to hide more than they revealed, did not bode well for the future. The days following Marissa's arrival were like walking through a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. The house, once filled with my mother's laughter and love, now felt cold and unwelcoming. Marissa's presence cast a shadow over everything, turning even the simplest daily routines into a series of struggles. One morning, as I sat down for breakfast, I noticed my food tasted unusually salty. "Marissa, did you put too much salt in this?" I asked, my voice hesitant. "Oh, did I? It must have been a mistake. Just eat it, Anna." "Don't be so picky," she replied, her tone dismissive, almost mocking. The incidents grew more frequent and spiteful. I remember finding my clothes ruined after laundry. "Marissa, my clothes are all faded." "What happened?" I asked one day, holding up my once favorite dress, now discolored and unwearable. She glanced at it and shrugged nonchalantly. "Maybe the washing machine is acting up, or perhaps it's time you stop wearing such childish clothes," she said. I felt a surge of frustration, but knew arguing would only make things worse. Feeling helpless, I turned to my father, hoping he would see through her facade. "Dad, Marissa is ruining my things. She's always mean to me," I said one evening, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and sadness. My father's reaction was far from what I had hoped for. "Anna, you're imagining things. Marissa is doing her best to fit into our family." "Stop causing trouble," he said sternly, his words cutting deep. "But Dad, it's the truth," I protested. But he wouldn't listen. "That's enough, Anna. I don't want to hear any more of your accusations," he replied, his voice rising in anger. Each day was a battle, trying to navigate around Marissa's hostility and my father's indifference. The home that once felt like a sanctuary now felt like a prison. I started spending more time in my room, trying to escape the constant tension that hung in the air. Living in that house of horrors, I felt alone and misunderstood. The safety and happiness that once filled those walls were replaced by fear and anxiety. Every day I longed for the past, for the times when my mother's smile was enough to light up the entire room, a stark contrast to the darkness that now lingered in every corner. Living with Marissa became a daily ordeal of evasion and endurance. Her hostility towards me escalated from verbal jabs to physical abuse. It started subtly, a pinch on my arm or a twist on my stomach, always in places easily concealed under my clothes. The pain was sharp, a cruel reminder of my helplessness in her presence. I developed strategies to avoid her, constantly alert to her whereabouts in the house. I would take long routes to my room or wait until she was occupied before I moved around. Despite my efforts, there were times when she caught me off guard, and those moments always resulted in some form of pain. One day, while I was quietly reading in the living room, Marissa walked in and, for no apparent reason, pinched my arm hard, her nails digging into my skin. I winced in pain but bit back any cry of protest. She looked at me with a cold, triumphant smirk before walking away. During one of Grandma's rare visits, she noticed my cautious movements and the way I flinched when Marissa's voice echoed through the house. "Anna, is everything all right at home?" Grandma asked, her voice filled with concern. I looked at her, my heart aching to tell her the truth, but fear and the desire to protect her from worry held me back. "Yes, Grandma, everything's fine. Just a lot of schoolwork," I lied, offering her a forced smile. She seemed unsure, but didn't press further. I felt a twinge of guilt for deceiving her, but I couldn't bear the thought of causing her any distress. That evening, as Grandma left, I saw Marissa watching from the window, her expression one of satisfaction. It was as if she relished the fact that she had control over me, that she could hurt me and get away with it. Her triumphant look was a clear message that she was the one in power, and I was just a helpless player in her twisted game. I retreated to my room, feeling trapped in a cycle of abuse and silence. The physical pain from Marissa's pinches and twists was bearable compared to the emotional turmoil I felt. School was my sanctuary, a place where I could briefly escape the misery of my home life. But even there, the shadows of my struggles at home began to seep through. My teacher, Mrs. Thompson, a kind-hearted woman who always encouraged her students, started to notice changes in me. One day, as I was handing in my homework, she gently grabbed my wrist, her eyes drawn to the bruises on my arm. "Anna, what happened here? These look like bruises," she said, her voice laced with concern. I quickly pulled my arm back, covering the bruises with my sleeve. "It's nothing, Mrs. Thompson. I fell while playing," I lied, avoiding her gaze. Mrs. Thompson didn't look convinced. "Anna, if there is something wrong or if someone is hurting you, you can tell me. It's important to speak out," she urged, her eyes searching mine for the truth. I wanted to confide in her, to tell her everything about Marissa and how I lived in constant fear, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I forced a smile. "Really, Mrs. Thompson, I'm fine. It was just a silly accident," I said. She gave me a long, thoughtful look, then nodded slowly. "All right, Anna, but remember my door is always open. You're not alone," she said, giving me a reassuring smile. I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat. Her kindness made it all the more difficult to maintain the facade that everything was all right. As I walked home that day, Mrs. Thompson's words echoed in my mind. I felt a mix of gratitude for her concern and a deep sense of loneliness from carrying my burdens alone. The thought of revealing the truth about my life at home was terrifying. I feared the consequences, what Marissa might do if she found out I had told someone. That night at dinner, I was quiet, lost in thought about Mrs. Thompson's offer to help. Marissa noticed my silence. "Why so quiet tonight, Anna? Cat got your tongue?" she asked in a mocking tone. I just shook my head and continued eating, trying to make myself as small and unnoticeable as possible. After dinner, as I lay in bed, the reality of my situation felt more overwhelming than ever. Mrs. Thompson's concern had shown me that people did care, yet the fear of what revealing the truth might bring kept me silent. I was caught between the desperation to tell someone and the fear of Marissa's retaliation, a balancing act that I navigated every day. The day my teacher, Mrs. Thompson, decided to involve my father was a day filled with anxiety and dread for me. I sat in the principal's office, fidgeting nervously, my mind racing with fear about how my father would react when he finally arrived. His face was stern, his eyes betraying a mix of irritation and embarrassment. "What's this about, Anna? Why am I being called to your school like this?" he demanded as he walked in. I glanced at Mrs. Thompson, seeking a semblance of support. Swallowing hard, I tried to find my voice. "Dad, Mrs. Thompson saw—" "She saw the bruises," I stammered, feeling the weight of his gaze on me. Before I could explain further, he interrupted, his anger palpable. "Bruises? What are you talking about? Are you making up stories again?" Mrs. Thompson stepped in, her tone firm yet calm. "Mr. Smith, I'm concerned about Anna's well-being. The bruises on her arm don't seem accidental. We need to address this." My father's face turned a shade darker with anger. "She's perfectly safe at home, Anna. Are you spreading lies about our family?" He turned towards me, his disappointment clear. The tears I had been holding back started to spill. "It's not lies, Dad. Marissa, she's been hurting me." I managed to get out, the truth finally surfacing. His reaction was one of total disbelief. "Marissa? That's ridiculous. She's been nothing but kind to you. I won't have you slandering her with these accusations." "But Dad, it's the truth," I cried out, desperate for him to believe me. He stood up abruptly, his patience wearing thin. "Enough of this. Tell Mrs. Thompson you made it all up," he ordered. I obediently turned to the teacher and repeated his words. She nodded back and didn't say anything. Upon reaching home, without another word, he locked me in my room. Through the door I could hear Marissa's voice dripping with false concern. "I told you she's just seeking attention," she said. I sat on my bed, feeling a profound sense of isolation and despair. The one person I thought I could always count on had turned his back on me. The walls of my room, which had once felt like my personal haven, now felt like the walls of a prison. I lay there, thinking about everything that had happened. The pain of the physical abuse was nothing compared to the emotional torment of being disbelieved and punished by my own father. It was a harsh realization that the person who was supposed to protect and love me unconditionally was now the source of my deepest pain. The days following my confinement in my room were some of the darkest I had ever experienced. Trapped and feeling utterly alone, I realized that my only hope lay in my grandmother, my father's mother. She was a kind and loving woman who had always shown me affection, but I had never dared to burden her with my troubles at home. One evening, when I was sure Marissa and my father were occupied, I mustered the courage to call my grandmother. My hands were shaking as I dialed her number. "Hello?" Her familiar warm voice came through the phone. Grandma, it's me, Anna, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Anna, my dear, how are you? She asked, her tone filled with genuine care. Tears welled up in my eyes as I replied, Grandma, I need help. Can I come and stay with you for a while? There was a moment of silence on the other end. What's wrong, Anna? Did something happen? I took a deep breath, the words rushing out. It's Marissa. She's been hurting me and Dad won't believe me. I don't know what to do. I could hear the concern in her voice as she quickly responded, Of course, my dear. You come right over. I'll take care of this. The next day, my grandmother arrived. She was a small woman, but her presence filled the room. She confronted my father with a strength that surprised me. John, I'm taking Anna with me. She's not safe here, she declared firmly. My father, taken aback, tried to protest. Mom, you can't just take her. She's my daughter. Your daughter whom you failed to protect, she countered sharply. I won't stand by and watch her suffer. Marissa tried to intervene. She's just a child making up stories. You can't believe her over us. Grandma turned to Marissa, her eyes steely. I know a scared child when I see one. Anna is coming with me, and if you try to stop me, I'll take this matter to the authorities. My father, realizing he was defeated, didn't put up any further resistance. As I gathered my things, I saw Marissa's expression change from defiant to defeated. Leaving the house with my grandmother, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in months, I felt safe. The car ride to Grandma's was quiet, but her presence was comforting. Once we arrived, she turned to me and said, You're safe now, Anna. You don't have to worry anymore. In my grandmother's house, I found the love and security that had been missing in my life. It was a haven where I could heal and regain my strength. The contrast between her nurturing home and the coldness of my father's house was stark. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe again, free from the fear and anxiety that had plagued me. Years had passed since I left my father's house to live with my grandmother. Her home had been a sanctuary, a place of healing and love. But time, as it does, moved on, and with it brought another wave of change. My beloved grandmother passed away, leaving a void that seemed impossible to fill. At the funeral, my father and Marissa showed up, their faces a mix of feigned sorrow and poorly disguised eagerness. It was clear they were more interested in what they might gain from her passing than mourning her loss. After the funeral, as we gathered at my grandmother's house, Marissa wasted no time. Well, Anna, I suppose you'll be finding a new place to live now. This house and everything in it belongs to your father now, she said, her voice tinged with a barely concealed glee. My father nodded in agreement, his eyes scanning the room as if already planning what to do with the house. I couldn't help but smile, a reaction that seemed to confuse them. Actually, that's where you're wrong, I said, the confidence in my voice taking them by surprise. What do you mean? My father asked, his expression shifting to one of confusion. I took a deep breath, savoring the moment. Grandma left a will. She bequeathed the house and a substantial amount of money to me, I explained, watching as their expressions changed from confusion to shock. But you're just a child. I'm your father. I should be in charge of any inheritance you receive, my father stammered, his sense of entitlement clear. Marissa chimed in, her voice shrill. Yes, until you come of age, your father will manage your property. Good prospects. Their reactions were almost amusing. You don't give a damn about me so much that you didn't even wish me a happy birthday. I turned 18 a month ago. I'm legally an adult now. I make my own decisions, I stated firmly, relishing the look of realization dawning on their faces. My father's expression turned from shock to anger, then to a sort of desperate pleading. Anna, you can't do this. We're your family, he said, his voice tinged with desperation. I looked at them, memories of my childhood flooding back. You stopped being my family a long time ago, I said, my voice steady. Marissa stepped forward, her tone now begging. At least let us stay in the house. We have nowhere else to go. We have not extended the lease of our house, I shook my head. This is my house now. You'll need to find somewhere else. As they left, the weight of years of pain and neglect seemed to lift off my shoulders. I stood in the house that was now mine, a house filled with memories of my grandmother's love, and felt a sense of closure. The echoes of the past my father's call stirred remained. I sat there, phone in hand, feeling a tumult of emotions: anger, betrayal, and a sense of injustice. But amid all that, there was also a sense of strength, a reminder of the resilience that had carried me through the darkest of times.